and Human. I'm Adam Foley.
And I'm Elisa Romeo.
Today we'll be talking about soul with Danica Patrick. Hello and welcome, everyone.
Hi, guys. We are so excited to share our next episode of Holy and Human with you.
This is our very first guest.
Our very first guest, Danica Patrick. Danica is a globally recognized race car driver who succeeded in the male-dominated world of professional motorsports. And although she's well known, what you may not know about Danica is that she is, at heart, a true mystic. She traveled up to see us at our soul barn, where we recorded this beautiful, organic conversation about how she met and connected to her soul, Lucy. Danica is a perfect messenger of soul, making this often confusing and invisible world super relatable through her grounded and thoughtful perspective. This intimate conversation is filled with examples of Danica's courage to go beyond the conventional as she finds truth and soul directly.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun recording this and a lot of fun with her the weekend coming up, and we had our friend with us too there. And we just found this conversation really accessible. So I just wanted to say, if you have somebody that is new to soul work, I think soul work can be a little confusing and daunting when you're just getting into this new world of using your intuition and spiritual thought. And this is a great jumping point. This is a great one to share with those people.
This is a good one to share, yeah. If you have friends or family members that are interested but don't really get it, because it can be hard to reach the first time because she's just so thoughtful and well-spoken. It's really beautiful how she explains it all.
Yeah, we just listened to it back for the first time after we recorded it a few weeks ago. And we were like, it's like Danica's interviewing us when we asked to interview her on it and about our work. And so I think it does do a good job of explaining soul work.
It's a nice conversation. I really like how we go back and forth, and it feels like you're just listening to us all chat around fire in the evening or something. Yeah. It's very sweet and casual. Stacy Barnes, her best friend, came up with her, and we did a podcast with the both of them, which will be dropping next week. So if you want to hear that, stay tuned for next week, where we talk about being an empath, a sensitive soul in this world. And we also talk about soul contracts and friendships and how to support each other as empaths in the world. So That's a really sweet, fun one too.
Yeah. Hope you guys enjoy. Welcome, Danica, to our podcast. We're super happy to have you here today.
I love your podcast.
Thank you very much.
I think you should come out with more of them.
But,
thanks. Yeah,
I want to say with that, just because that was a good segue, is that we are so excited to have you as the first person we're interviewing on, because you understand this work and you have a history with understanding soul, and our friend Stacy connected us. And so it's so awesome to just also have gotten to spend all day yesterday with you, so that it feels like we're just like continuing this deep conversation instead of just starting off.
You've been working from a distance for a long time, and we've done one soul session together. So obviously the backstory being that our friend Stacy, which listeners that listen to my podcast have heard Stacy Barnes a couple of times, because I haven't interviewed her properly, like a how are you, what's your company, whatever. It's more of a deep dive into how we've experienced a certain emotion or
we love
idea
that,
or
the
word.
Words you came up with.
So people have heard of her, but they've also probably seen her on my social media, and we've been friends for a really long time. And she gave me your book, Meet Your Soul, back in 2015, I think it was. And I finally finished it in 2017 at the beginning of the year. And then I took this trip to Tulum that was a really big life-changing event, and where I met my soul finally, and a bunch of other stuff. So you've been, and that was also when we did our session, was the beginning of 2017. So, as I said to a friend recently, you've been guiding me from a distance for a long time. And then I recently reread everything from the part of the book where it was after you've met your soul. So it was like 3/4 of the book, or half to 3/4 of the book. I reread that again. And then I did the gremlin exercise, which was super therapeutic and helpful for me too, that's in the book. So again, while we don't know each other and we only just met each other yesterday for the first time, as you would both
person,
well know,
yeah.
like our souls have been communicating for a long time and guiding from a distance, and like the energies are familiar with each other.
Yeah, we've been feeling that too.
I'm feeling you for so long. We trust Stacy so much, so every time she talks about you and talks about you so highly, that really means a lot to us about.
Yeah.
But I'd love to talk about your Meet Your Soul experience, because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people are really curious about what that feels like. People might have read Meet Your Soul, they might have tried some of the exercises, but to really get a first-hand account of what does soul feel like, what was that experience like for you?
Well, I mean, I read.
Can I ask first, did you
Yeah.
have any idea of soul before you read the book? Like, what was your interpretation? And just starting out, what were you thinking when you saw the title, Meet Your Soul? What were you thinking?
I just
that
thought it
would be?
was spiritual, and I've always been very interested in all religions and all spirituality, and just like what is reality and what is out there.
That's such a good way of putting it. We
Yeah.
talk a lot about that. Like, what? To us, it's always wild that some people don't think about why you're here.
Right.
Like, some people are like, that's shocking to us. Always like, you've never thought about like the meaning of why your consciousness stuck in this body, walking around on this planet. That's wild to me.
And
like,
that would be like the description of, and you know, it sounds a bit harsh, but I can be harsh. Can be zombies. They're just like zombies, just like on the wheel, sleepwalking through life. Like, instead of asking, you know, what is God, or you know, what is real and what's not real. Why am I here? Why am I doing this?
Yeah. What is the
what
point
is love? Yeah.
of any of this?
Yeah.
Do you
what is
feel
the point?
like, since meeting your soul, more woken up? Do you feel more in
well,
touch
yeah.
with
So
that?
let's get to the story about how I did it, because I think this is important, because as we've talked about, there can be a disconnect from like someone who's so integrated like you guys are with the spiritual world and with energy and soul, your soul itself as well as others. So it can seem hard to understand and almost not believable, and perhaps made up. So I've always
scary for some people.
Sure, and I think that if I'm going to guess what the fear is because there's a knowing that there's truth there, and truth can be very scary for people, and it just can be.
Why do you think that is? That's so interesting to me. Like, what is the fear of the truth there? What are they scared?
Because I just think it's because it'll be different than what you have. It'll be different than what you've been thinking. Your whole life will have to change. And when you say that, people are like, oh. Or you'll be a different person. You're like, oh. Like, I like who I am.
Yeah,
like, I like my life, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I love the expression that your new life is going to cost you your old one. So, but why be scared? What if it's better, right? So I think that the fear of learning something, creating a new belief system, is that you're going to have to let go of the old ones, which is going to include sometimes your job, your friends, your relationships, your family sometimes. Like, it could be any of those things. And if you're going to ask anyone, like, oh, do you want to get rid of your relationship? You're like, no. Do you want to get rid of your job? No. Do you want to get rid of your family? No. So that's very scary. But you have to discover whether or not it truly fits who you are, and your purpose here, and your calling, and your lesson to learn, or your evolution, just pure evolution. I also like this idea that, you know, if somebody is uncomfortable with your growth, like, then they are scared of their own.
That's really
true.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'd be open-minded, going, "Oh my God, what are you into? That's so cool." They're not threatened. They're open. They're happy for you. Instead of going,
their identity. I think there's a big identity shift.
Sure.
And when you say leaving family and friends, it's setting boundaries with the people that are unwilling to see you as who you are, that want you to be somebody other than who you naturally are on the soul
and
level.
who you're meant to become.
Yeah.
So then it's like blocking that.
Yeah. People,
potential.
I think there's a general opinion that change is a bad thing. Like, when somebody meets you and they're like, "You've changed," I'm like, thank you. Like, I've been working really freaking hard on it. And you know if that change is positive or negative. Like, you know, if somebody's like, "Man, you've changed," you're like, "Yeah, I'm a crackhead now, and I lost my job, and nobody likes me," and like, that's probably not a positive change. But if you've you know if you've done the self-work and you know if you've turned the mirror on yourself to go like, what do I need to work on, and the self. And so for me, that's my favorite part about spirituality versus what I would call religion, is that religion is outside of you and someone else is forgiving you, someone else is, someone else is affecting your you, instead of you controlling your reality through your thoughts and your beliefs and your understanding projections, understanding your triggers, when other people are projecting onto you as well as you're projecting onto other people, and then the triggers that happen based on childhood conditioning and things that have happened in your life through relationships and all of your experiences. So I like the self, which is to me what spirituality is so much about. Back to my story, right? We need to meet my soul. You guys need to realize.
Can I just say something on that last point you said? Is I feel when people do soul work, you can feel a quality of wisdom growing in them. And I think wisdom is something you can see and feel in somebody. It's sort of, you can feel they've incarnated more of themselves. They just feel more present in their body.
And more trustable. That's how it feels to me. It's like, do I feel like this person's like spouting spiritual things that are like ideas to them? Mm-hmm. Or have they done the work where it's in their body, where I'm like, I feel comfortable sitting with them. There's some, like if I had something horrible happen in my life, someone close to me died, I can come to them and trust our conversation, not they're going to like just start parroting weird things they've read to me or something.
So Lisa and I are strong advocates of
that embodiment,
of knowing your internal truth and finding your internal truth through your soul. And I think you can do that within a religion, but it's all about not letting other people's beliefs affect what you really believe. So really taking that self-inquiry and looking.
Are you doing the work to look in?
But let's get back to your story.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's important because it will let people listening have more of an understanding for what's possible and what else is out there, and that this is real and I'm not just some crazy person or somebody that's faking myself out. So anyway, I mean, I'm just a regular girl, grew up in Northern Illinois, raced my whole life, and then get to where Stacy gave me Meet Your Soul, and then I finally finished reading it, and I went on a trip to Tulum with Stacy, and I of course know whenever I take a trip with Stacy that I'm taking a trip with my most, spiritual, deepest friend. Like, she just goes there, but I go there too, and I really love to do that. And so I know that there's potential for breakthroughs or big conversations or realizations or epiphanies. But I really honestly went on this trip thinking we're just going to have a nice trip, and I don't know what's going to happen. And it was funny how it came along, because back when the trip came about, I was actually going to go with my then boyfriend to like some Cabo or something like that for a trip before our race season started. And he's like, I'm going to stay behind. I'm like, you know what? I need to go on a trip. I'm going to go on a trip, and just because you're not doesn't mean I'm not. So like, I'm still going to go somewhere. And so then first thing I did was call Stacy and be like, hey, you want to go to Tulum? And so it was kind of last minute-ish. And so we get there, and we're there for a week. And there was this dog that kept popping up on the beach, and like, I love dogs. Anybody that knows me personally knows how much I love dogs, and maybe even if you don't know me personally, I have two of my own.
You brought our dog a present, which was very sweet, and shows your love of dogs when you showed up.
Our dog is in love with Danica.
Our dog loves Danica.
Lily. So I just love them, and so and in fact, almost any animal, I just feel like I can go up and pet it. Like if I saw a jaguar, or a bobcat, or a panther, or a lion,
I feel like you would do that.
There's a possibility that this could go just fine. And I really would love to like meet that lion. But anyway, so this dog on the beach, and it kind of kept coming around, but it had this really interesting energetic to it where it was like, I always want to see this dog, and I felt like really interested in this dog, and it would come sit with me and be very like calm and peaceful, but every time I was really looking for this dog, I'm like, I want to find this dog. Over a couple of days, I didn't see it, and then as soon as I was like, you know what, it'll just show up when it shows up, and I let go. It was like this energetic proof of like when you let go of something and it comes back, it's kind of meant to be, or like it showed me that you can't force anything. And so then the dog would pop up when I finally let go of this
Can
concept.
I ask you why you love the dog? What was it about this dog?
The dog just felt, well, that will be the next part, but it really just felt a connection. Like, it just felt like, it felt human-like to me. Like, the way that it interacted with me was very like it sat with me like a human. Mm-hmm. Like, very peaceful, calm, like just sitting there, like as if your husband or wife or like friend would just sit there with you, like watching the waves crash. It wasn't like running around or licking me or needy or whatever. It just was sitting there, like very human like. It's kind of weird.
You knew your boyfriend wasn't coming. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was a girl, and so then I gave her a name, and I named her Lucy. Like, it just came to me. I was like, oh, Lucy. Like, the dog's name is Lucy. Mm-hmm. And so then Stacy and I went to some ruins in the Tulum area, and we were walking around. There was some stray dogs, and I was like, just loved these 3 stray dogs walking around, and they seemed almost like a trio of guides, like walking around in these ruins. Like, hi. We live here.
Which always come in 3s, in myths.
Really?
It's always like the 3 come together with the messages. Past, present, future.
Oh my God. Yeah. So these 3 dogs are walking around. And I'm like, petting these stray dogs. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, I have such a connection and such an emotional feeling towards a stray dog. Animals in general, but a stray dog. Like, I feel so sad for them. And they're not like wanted or loved, or they're lonely or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I think I was a stray dog in another life. Like, I feel way too connected to this idea. And then it all of a sudden dawned on me, and I'm like, I think Lucy's me. Like, I don't know. I just think Lucy's me. And so go on to the next day. We have a yoga class that's supposed to be like 2 or 3 hours, and it turned into like 3.5 hours. And we got done, and we were late for our massage, which was a chakra balancing massage. So we rode our bikes down to get to our chakra balancing massage, and then afterwards, I'm very fixated on food too. Like, I have a fear of not having food, or not having enough, or not having the quality of food I want, because I'm particular.
It's a stray dog past life.
Maybe, honestly. There it is. Yeah. And
together.
So, yeah. Oh my God, that's probably it. Why didn't that come to me sooner?
We knew that.
Thank you, Adam. So I have food in my bag.
I just thought it was like a hangry thing. Like, I get hangry, like, if my blood sugar's crashing. Is it that?
Yeah.
Or
no,
okay.
No. It's like I just need comfort in that. There's comfort in it.
Knowing that it's there.
Knowing it's available. So we go and get our lunch finally after our chakra massage, which is way late in the day because, we've already done a 3.5 hour yoga class, and we've done our massage and driven around. And so I'm feeling kind of like unsettled, like, finally the food, and like, oh man, it's like 2 or 3 in the afternoon now, and Stacy is like doing her flying high, like giggling for no reason. Well, it seems like no reason to me, and I'm looking at her, I'm like, you're annoying me, can you calm down? And like, or like, I'm not where you're at right now. So anyway, we finish our lunch, we go back to the hotel, and I say I'm going to go down to the beach. She's on the phone with her husband, and I said I'm going to go to the other side of our like laying area on the beach to try and find a new spot, because we've been laying in the same spot every day, and I thought maybe there'd be some sunlight somewhere else. So I got down there. Turns out no sunlight. So as I'm walking to try and find like a bed with sunlight on it, I get over and I'm like, well, there's that bed again. I guess I'm all the way to the far left. We'll just go back to that same spot we've been laying all week. I sat down, and all of a sudden the dog popped up. Like, the dog showed right up and came over to me, and I lost my shit. Mm-hmm. I had this extremely transported feeling for what I'm not sure was how long. It felt like maybe a minute. It could have been 5 seconds. But it was as if there was, from where we were sitting, it was like as if there was this like shaft of, like this vortex or tunnel or shaft of energy that went from us up into the sky, like at a diagonal. And it was this information download that was coming from above, but it was through, like, the dog was like the conduit. And the message was, Lucy is your soul, like Lucy is you, like that this is like the connection, and that your soul, God energy, source, whatever you want to call it, like is always present. Like Lucy, my soul, and this energy was always here with me. It's always, it's total pure love. It's like it's never gone, no matter how far I go, no matter how long, like no matter how many decades I can not be present with it or acknowledge it or feel it, like it's never not there. It's always with me. It's always total. It's always pure love. And it's also always 100% forgiving. Like there's nothing that I could have ever done or ever will do that will take away from the purity. It has no impact on it. It's always like that. And so that's the message that came through. And I just started losing. I was crying and bawling, and I've got my sunglasses on. I'm like, I don't want to look like the weirdo on the beach. What's happening? And so let me interject for a second and say, you can't make someone cry like that. You can't make someone cry like that. You can't make someone sob and bawl and go into convulsions and feel something like that. So Stacy came down finally, and I had recovered a little bit.
I
when
feel
she
like
got
that's
there.
the crying of remembering. Like it all comes together. It's like a memory. It's an experience, but you're also like, I know this. Did it feel like that to you? Like were you like part of you was like,
yeah, it was like, you know that you don't ever have
it's
to
not
worry.
mental. It's
Yeah.
not like you're thinking about it. It's like an experience where
Yes.
you're like, this is something I just know within me.
Yes, it was much more of an experience, and the remembering that, yeah, I'm never far. I'm right here. I will always love you. I am love. Like you can never offend me. I will never be mad at you. Like I will never judge you. It's just, I'm just here in a pure state, like waiting.
That's great.
I'm getting so many chills.
So it was just, and so she came down, and I had started crying again, and she walked over, because it was like this like acknowledgement on a friend level of like, you know, thank you for giving me this book. Thank you for, you know, being a friend that can give me this space and hold space for me to be in this state, and also just freaking love it, where I'm over here judging myself going, get your shit together, Danica, and stop crying. She's like, oh no, it's beautiful. It's okay. Beautiful. And but yeah, I realized, so my soul is Lucy. That's how I refer to my soul. That's how, and that was the day that I realized, most importantly, that I had an experience that was like nothing I had ever had before, energetically, from even a mental standpoint, like an awareness standpoint. Like that was insanely unique, and nothing I'd ever experienced before. So it then opens you up to realizing that like my question at the beginning, like what is reality? Like what is out there? What is in here? You know, what is happening?
Yeah,
why are we
possible?
here? What's going
Yeah.
on? What's going on in the empty space between everything? And so, you know, yeah, it's just part of that evolution of, you know, opening up your mind and thinking differently, and so I just really, really knew without a shadow of doubt that there was so much more to this physical plane than we acknowledge or feel or understand on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, your story reminds me a lot. This is a story we include in our next book coming up, but is, you know, Elise and I also every once in a while do sessions with kids. And she was doing a session with a 7-year-old girl, and we were trying to show her how she could talk to her soul. And we're like, what's a good metaphor? What's something we can use to help her connect to her soul? And so we said, what's your favorite animal? Imagine what your favorite animal. And she's like, I love this bunny in my class named Bun Bun. It's our class bunny. And so then we said, imagine that Bun Bun is the source of all love, your unique
knowing
version of love, and has access to all wisdom. What is Bun Bun going to say to you? And she was having trouble with some bullying at her school. There was a group of girls that were like just making her lose self-confidence.
At 7. That's a
Yeah.
bummer.
Yeah, it was a real bummer. This clique had sort of gained up on her. And so, but as soon as she started talking to Bun Bun, her soul, she just started getting this incredible information coming through. Like it was like she went from a 7-year-old to like a 50-year-old. Like she was like more mature than me in like her social navigation.
We asked her like, why do you think this girl's doing it, the main bully? And she's like, she's having problems at home. She feels like she's not good enough, and this makes her feel better when she's mean to me at school. And it was like 2 minutes
Oh
before,
my God.
if I'm like, had asked her that question, it would have been all over the place.
She's mean.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
Right?
She was actually in a victim place of like, I don't know anything. That's how she started. And that to me is like a miracle.
Wow.
And with kids, you know, or even adults, we don't have to use the word soul. It's like whatever your kind of container is for what is all loving and all knowing. And would, like what you said, that beautiful diatribe you just had of like, well, endless forgiveness and is always present no matter how long. That is what we're talking about. Whatever we're calling that, soul or whatever, bun, like it doesn't matter what we're calling it.
Or like yesterday when I was joking, I was like, what's your, you know what, nope, I was gonna say what's your gut tell you, but I should appropriately say what does your intuition tell you right now. So however it applies to you, it's kind of
Same
like
thing.
talking about God or source or whatever you want to call a higher power, higher self, whatever, frequency, energy, Allah, whatever it is to you. We could all be talking about the same thing: gut, intuition, higher self, soul, whatever.
And we usually see it as like God or is love, like the big love, from which we came. So we see it as the ocean, and then the souls are the raindrops. So it's like we're made of love. We are God. We are that energy. That it was the intention of love behind the universe. To me, it feels like a hum of like this like
Vibration.
Well,
like thing being created.
Yeah.
With intention. There's like intention behind it. Just like with soul. It's not. I think Einstein has this great quote that's like the most important decision we make is if this is a meaningless or a meaningless universe, meaningful or meaningless universe. And I feel like that's at the root of what we're talking about behind all of this is like, is this all just randomly happening? Right. And my ego has to be in control and like make shit happen because like there isn't anything bigger going on? Or can I relax and be and partner and like tap into the source of love that actually dreamt me up in the first place?
Because if the universe is meaningless, then what's the point of doing the right thing? What's the point of growing? It's meaningless. Like we're just like, meat bags, just cruising around for no purpose. Like we're just gonna rot and. Or if it's meaningful, then you go, oh, wow, okay, well, now what does that mean? And then what does that mean I need to do now, too? And so that then will spark growth. It will spark curiosity. It will spark doing the right thing. It will spark being a an upstanding person. It'll give you reasons to do the right thing and to grow and to evolve and to ask questions. Or if it's meaningless, what's the whole point of any of it, right? Just like... total like immediate self-satisfaction, you might as well just let your ego run your entire life.
And I love the right thing changes as people get to know their soul, because sometimes they go from program morality of like, I've been told this is right or this is wrong, based on morality,
belief
to
systems.
I feel love now. I'm tapped into love. I am love. So what's right becomes an extension of that. So that this authenticity starts coming through with what's right. And what's right for me might be different than what's right for you.
Because it's connected to a feeling. Like
it's connected to me the truth of love, like the energy of love, the embodiment of love, instead of a idea of love.
I think it's an experience, like you were saying, when you met your soul, whereas this just, I just know this. It's like a Gnostic.
It's a
and
knowing
then you can't
and
do
a
the
physical
wrong thing.
reaction. Like you can't make me cry like that,
Yeah.
right? So like the intellectual knowing doesn't have a physical response so much, right? But like when you feel like love on such a deep level, you give birth, you get married, or something hits you so hard, like you get emotional, right? Like there's a physical reaction.
And then you're not like giving to the homeless guy because it's the right thing to do, or working at the soup kitchen. You're like, I feel the love that is my connection to that person. And it's just like love spilling out of you as you're in the soup kitchen. It's not like some like duty you're doing to be a good person. It's not like you're getting head pats from God. It's like the relationship with God changes from being like this like scary father figure that I have to like get approval from, to being like, I feel myself as the ocean. I feel the ocean within my raindrop. And the love is just...
With soul work, I think the more you get to know your soul, the more you're getting to know your unique raindrop, your unique version of love that is you. And for me, that's your purpose. It's like, why did God put you on this planet? Why did God design you to have the quirks and personality traits that you have? Like, what are you supposed to figure out here? And with soul work, that's that self-reflective look that makes that inward turn. of really examining your true nature, not the nature that is expected of you culturally, or you were raised with your family, or your belief system, but just what is really you. And the deeper you dig with that, the closer you get to God, in my opinion. You start feeling, not in my opinion, in my truth, when you have an experience of that, you start to know how you are in relationship with God, and how he's part of it is part of you, and you are part of it. And I really see God as love. And so whenever we're fully participating in love, if it's for our partner, if it's for our children, if it's for humanity as a whole, if it's love for what we do, if it's that we are connecting to that vibration and that source.
Yeah.
So how would you say, after you met your soul...
One thing can I say about that story, too, when you're telling the story of Lucy, I think about... at the end of... This is what I thought you were going to say, because the new book we're working on, the end of it, Your Soul's Guide to Relationship.
I forgot the title of our book.
It's amazing. I mean, I know what happened with Meet Your Soul for me, so... to meet your soul in relationship and how that applies. I'm so happy for you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the end of that,
and
I don't want to give the end of the book away, but Adam did this really beautiful job of kind of you can look at everything from 3 different levels of the pragmatist, which is just kind of the surface appearance of something. The rationalist, is it pragmatist? Rationalist is just kind of getting mental about everything and not being in partnership. Or the mystic, where you're engaged, connected. So we could look at your story with the dog of Danica just saw a dog. She's tripping out on this dog. This dog meant nothing. There's strays everywhere. You know what I mean? The skeptic could see the story through the lens of, it's meaningless. Nothing means anything.
Yeah. The story you told yourself was this dog meant something.
Right. When really nothing means anything. But then you can't fight with the feeling of what you knew and felt and experienced. So when you're in it, having a mystic experience, you're experiencing it as it. Those, Carl Jung calls it synchronicities, the meaningful coincidences. They're not meaningless. The universe was lined up. There's this kind of as above, so below moment that's set up so that you're able to engage and discover yourself as that love. So it's the dog's holding that projection, but also the perfect embodiment for the whole experience to happen, which is a shamanic way of looking at anything. Like I said the other day, when there was this moment where the eagle picked up this dead crow that had been across, and it just happened at the exact moment I opened the door that it's flying over our house carrying this dead crow, this eagle that I'd been watching for 3 days, and what's the story of the crow? And I was engaged with the crow, having a story, and so this bigger moment of meaning comes through the physical world, through animals often, shamanically, to kind of
right.
Teach me something, show me something, tell me something.
Well, I love that, I 100% believe that there's other realities, and that we can be communicated through, spirit can communicate, souls that have passed can communicate, and so how else can they do it? So they're going to do it through metaphors. They're going to do it through totems like animals. They're going to do it through maybe a thought you have, and then you look at the clock and it's 3:33, and you're okay, and it's a lock-in of okay. And so when these little synchronicities happen, we're oh, that's kind of interesting. Stop looking at it. Stop dismissing it, and start looking at those synchronicities as being what I would call winks that you're on the right path, you're doing good. Yes, keep going. You're on the right path. So the more synchronicities you have, to me, it's a sign that you're doing really good work for your higher self, your soul, for your purpose, and for knowing yourself on a deeper level.
Absolutely.
And connected, because you can't miss. You can miss a synchronicity, but if you're recognizing it with it, then that means you're connected enough to receive it.
In the final chapter there,
you're receiving instead of just pushing through and involved in the human air quote race of just how fast can we get to death.
And the 11:11 thing's so funny, because there was a period in my life where, because some people are you just happen to notice the clock when you're just noticing the time. But I remember there's a period where it was really coming for me. It was my head would be turned. Like I'd be like focused writing over here on my computer, and then it was like my head was like 11. It was like there's no way that was like me trying to make up meaning from numbers on a clock. It was very directed.
But what we were saying with that last chapter, the rationalist, so I kind of put it as like the archetype of rationalism, is that there's this feeling with the rationalists where they kind of accuse people that are mystics or people that are connected to the synchronicities or these bigger things as not in touch with reality. They're like, oh, these people are out of touch with reality, and we are the ones that are in touch with reality.
Yeah, they're in the clouds.
And life is meaningless. We have this rationalistic viewpoint of the universe, scientific. But, it's just, if we put truth as something that can only be empirically proven, I think that's very tragic, because truth is something you know and you experience. And so I think Elisa and I often are trying to flip that dialogue as people that are connected to their souls are the ones that are most connected to reality. And it's actually delusional to think that this is all just physical and meaningless.
As they say, wake up from the dream.
You
need to wake up from the dream that you've been in, which is that nothing matters or nothing's connected, or, there's not as much happening on the metaphysical level, or nothing happening on the metaphysical level.
And I think people go to that reality because they don't know how to discern. Like, they're like, well, what the hell are you doing? I saw a thing the other day online where it was a lawyer, and he's like, I just think it's a bad idea to make decisions from feeling, because you're gonna screw your life over if you do that, and it's better to just be rational all the time. And I was like, well, if you don't understand the difference between projection and intuition, and maybe you've had a heartbreak once because you didn't understand the unconscious stuff you were doing in that relationship, and you're just looking at the wreckage of that reality makes sense. But if you actually have a high emotional quotient and you've studied for years about what intuition is and the difference between intuition and like what's happening in the pineal gland when you're connected, and how you can sense emotionally when you're connected versus when you're in an egoic trip, like those are the discernment that takes work and time. Sure. And so it's really easy to just judge that from a place I've never experienced.
It's like drinking wine. When you start drinking wine, it all tastes the same, right? You start drinking red wine, you're like, God, I don't know, what is this? It just all tastes the same.
We have that example in our new book.
Oh my God.
Here's the plug for Danica's wine.
And I make wine.
She makes wine. Say the name of it so everybody knows.
Somnium. It means dream in Latin. It's But anyway,
waking up through the dream. Dream one.
That's right. Wake up
from the dream. Oh, that's not important.
No, that is such a part. Come on, that's.
I think it's important for people to know. Who cares about my wine? If you want to know about it, look it up. We're spending time on the spiritual stuff.
No, but
wine is so boring compared to that.
So good. The story. Just say the name. What is?
Well, it's Somnium, and I was standing on a knoll in the middle of Napa Valley, and back in 2006, and I just thought to myself, man, I wish I could have I want to have something like this someday. And so when it really started coming to fruition, which never takes too long for me. I mean, this is something I thought, I don't have $50 million, but I will someday. And so 2 years later, I saw the property, and I bought it at the beginning of 2009 then. And when I was looking up names for it, actually I was looking up a name for an LLC for the property, because it just was dirt, and so it had to be planted, and all kinds of things had to happen. I thought I was doing some translations, language translations on my computer, and so I put dream in, and somnium came up, and I was like, and it's a Latin word, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, that's too good for some LLC. I'm going to name the wine that. And it only took probably 20 minutes to figure that out. And so anyway, it was just a dream. But the point is that when you start, I feel like if I'm going to like put this into a little bit more attainable perspective, when you start drinking wine, it all tastes the same, like red wine or whatever it is. Like red and white taste different, but when you start drinking red wine, let's say like a Pinot or a Cab or a Merlot or a Malbec or whatever, it all tastes the same. Like I can't tell a difference. You've gone over to people's houses or they've come over, they're like, I don't care, I can't tell the difference between any one of them. Yeah. And you're like, okay, we
might be in that category.
And that's totally fine. You're allergic to alcohol, so I completely understand. We're not going to go through that testing period with you.
Right.
For your own well-being.
You don't want to see it.
But to me, that's what I just heard come through as far as like what it's like to hear soul, to hear intuition, and to understand like how the messages are coming through, and whether or not it's authentic, or whether it's egoic based, or whether or not it's a projection. Like it's
the
like wine.
subtleties.
You'll subtleties, and they really start to have a feel and like a characteristic to them that you're like, oh yeah, well, you're speaking from your ego right now. So, and somebody else might just be like, what do you mean? This is totally like, and you can decipher because your palate is so highly tuned in that you are sommeliers of the energetic world.
Okay, I am dying right now because we're just talking about synchronicities, and I like totally like forget that you like own this winery. And in our new book, I'm going to show you this after we're done with this podcast. Adam wrote this whole part where like, how can we explain to people how to sense soul differences? And he wrote a whole thing and he used the word sommelier about souls are different types of wines. And literally everything you just said is out of the new book. You're going to die.
Just channeled
I promise I did not read the book last night.
And we can test this double blind or whatever we call it because we gave them the book. They're the first people, Stacy and Danica, to have the book yesterday. This is not some kind of scam. We did not pre-plan this.
So what is this called? This is called a synchronicity.
This is a synchronicity, everyone listening.
Happening live. Yeah.
And they have the book. There's no way we are bullshitting making this up right now. We can all test this later.
Yeah.
So I'm just dying because she's like here with like wine. She's like saying
crazy.
Back to like what's from the book. I'm like, are you tripping out? Because I'm tripping out
and
right
now.
Like,
Maybe
this is such a weird.
Let's
like,
do a little woo-woo moment. So now I'm trying to decide between whether or not this is some kind of like spiritual way of proving to us that like you're in the right place at the right time, or are our higher selves, our souls, speaking to each other, and are we connected? Like since time and space don't really like fit in, aren't necessarily real, and time and past, present, and future exist all at the same time simultaneously. Like, am I accessing this information that I will know in the future that I'm just like accessing now? So what is it?
This is what Oprah calls a full circle moment. I'm having a full circle down the right now.
Elisa's tearing up because I'll take over for a second. Elisa is energetically sensitive, so she can always feel just the reality of things that are happening. She's in touch with the real reality, so we're big feelers here. But how I use it,
Stacey not growing.
How I use it in the book is I talk about being able to feel the energies of different people. How at first when you're relating to people, if you're relating only egoically, you're just looking at the traits that are on paper. You know, it's like, do we have similar likes? Do we have similar personality types? Like, where do you work? What are your hobbies? What type of jokes do you like? And you just see if you can fit together on that purely egoic level. But when you start getting to know your soul and knowing the unique flavor of love that is you, like your soul's completely.
We use the word flavor all the time.
Yeah, your soul's completely different than my soul, and that's what I love about this work. Is your path is not supposed to be my path, and so if I made some doctrine, you know, that was like the right thing to do spiritually is to always be compassionate, you know, or something like that, which then we would be following the same rules. But your version of compassion might be different than my version of compassion. You might be able to, I just already know this about your personality, is be able to like cut through the bullshit with people. If somebody's being fake with you, you're like, no, I'm not going to tolerate that. Like, what's real here? Let's like connect to what's real. Where I might more hold just like space for somebody till they get to that point. So both of our versions of love is different. And I think the more you get to know your soul and other people, there's just this array of flavors that open up and subtleties, and you get to know the energetic nature of each person. And then it becomes just really beautiful. You know, Elisa and I really fall in love with everybody we work with in a way because we're connecting to them as love, their soul. We can feel them on that level. And it's just awe-inspiring. You know, I feel like life has completely changed for me after doing this type of work. But I want to talk a little bit, too, about after your soul experience. What has life been like during those times that you're not connected to your soul? During those times that you're like, life is overwhelming, I might be having some conflict with these people on the side. And how do you integrate soul into those types of experiences?
Well, I for sure, my walking life, things get to me and I can sort of make up stories and I can go down rabbit holes, and I know part of me is very good at making up a story to myself, and I can make it be very, very believable. And some of that is just because I'm very good at making up stories in my head and creative, and also some of it is because of triggers from my experiences and my childhood that my ego then pops up to go, I'll make you safe. Don't worry. We won't have to deal with this. We're going to project. We're going to deflect. We're going to, I'm going to make up a story about them to make you feel better. You don't have to feel this. Like, it's their fault, not yours. And so,
so this is the interpretation
so this is like being out of soul state. Like, this would be being in the egoic or away from soul and not self-reflecting very much, really. And so it feels consuming. It feels bad. It feels uncomfortable. It feels scary. It feels it just doesn't feel good. And so, and it doesn't feel clear. It feels confusing. It feels it just feels out of control, more so. And so, but what happens is, and I can't say I do this every time, but I mean, like I said to you guys yesterday, I don't meditate regularly. I don't journal regularly. I do them on an as needed basis. But as we learned and as I described, like, I get information really quick and easy. So it's sad that I don't do it like on a daily basis, because I would probably get a lot of good information all the time, but I don't feel that drive or need. So
but when you're feeling disconnected,
but when I'm feeling it,
you're like,
if I can remember to have a conversation with my soul. And so the most functioning element from the book and from meeting my soul that I do is, at first I called it free writing, where I would just start writing and just thoughts would come down. And then I probably from the book and reading it, and I just started asking my soul questions then, and I'd be like, Lucy, hi, how you doing? Good. I'm always good. And you're like, okay, like,
how are you doing?
I don't know. Let's see. Let's see if I can do it right now.
Yeah.
So if I can say it out loud, so I'd be like, Lucy, like, how are you? I'm good. How are we doing today? Oh, you're obviously doing fantastic. Are we getting through to people? Of course. Is it going to make a difference to them? Some. Why only some? Because they're not ready. Okay. Is that okay? Yeah, some people's purpose in life is not to figure it all out, and it won't make it, and they don't need it. Okay. Do you like speaking out loud? I don't care. Okay.
Can I ask your soul a question?
Yeah, sure.
So if we connect to Lucy, is there anything that she directly wants to say to the audience?
Your soul is waiting for you when you're ready.
That's beautiful. I love that you just did that and showed everybody the example of it in that moment. And so just to explain,
I'm getting a lot of pings in my chakras going like, what did you just do? But
I almost wanted to ask you to connect in one more time, and I'm going to ask you one more question. Can you see how Elisa and Adam feel about you right now and doing this and
love
what you are for us? Yeah, I just wanted you to see it from that level.
That was it. It's super pure in love. I just got one word from her, but love.
That's great.
There's so
much for people that are listening, there's this divide between the narratives. There's the one narrative that's the ego, that's like, oh, what's happening? That has access to less information. It's more aware of like what's happening right now in the room.
It's going to save you from the lion that's chasing you.
Yeah.
It's old programming.
And there might be, an egoic part that has a little anxiety, we're recording live, something like that. But then when you switch that soul dialogue, you have sudden access to this wisdom.
Yeah.
And the more you do that, the more you incarnate that wisdom and make it part of your life. So instead of walking in here and just start making choices from ego, you start really making choices from your highest version of love.
What I find is that the information is very simple, as you heard. There was only one point that I started elaborating to try and help people for a second, but the information always really is very simple. And so I would say that this is also, like, soul is also trying to communicate to you without you having met it also. And so here's the way I would describe it, so maybe you can identify the information or that you are getting information. It's very short. It's very simple. You can ask it a question. Like, you can kind of have an inner monologue going on about, like, oh, shit, I'm so, like, worried about, like, this. And,
it's to the point.
Am I doing the right thing? And, like, if there's, like, a ping of a word or a sentence or a simple thought that to me is like something that's always happened in my life that I've never recognized as being like the soul like squeaking through every now and again. Like you don't recognize that's what it is, but it is trying to tell you.
Hunches and intuitions you've been having.
Yes, the gut feeling.
And they usually are so kind of fast that it's easy to be like, I don't know, now start like arguing
dismiss
with it.
Or minimize it.
Right, so it's very simple, clear, concise information, and it is kind of, and it's also repeating. So I find that too, is that the message is always the same. Like there's no need to change the message to make you feel like I'm having a dialogue. Like it's not. It's the same message. Damn it! Like get the message.
It's repetitive. I used to tell people soul is repetitive, and they'll say, "Why does my soul keep telling me to do this thing?" Like my soul, when I check in, is always like, "Elisa, breathe," and I'm always like, "Sophia, why are you always telling me to breathe?" And she's like, "'Cause you're never breathing."
Right.
And
it's
like
simple.
when you start breathing, I'll stop telling you to breathe.
Yeah.
And that's what you need right now.
Yep. Exactly.
Soul knows exactly how to translate to the ego. So soul usually is just direct and to the point. It's like, let's not fluff this up with story or drama or it's just, here's the love message. Now follow it.
It's very efficient. As a Capricorn, I very much appreciate that about soul. It's just, come on, people. I'm always thinking, how can I kind of incarnate people the fastest in a life? Like, it's a weird pressure. That's a pressure that sits on me like it's insane every day. And so Meet Your Soul was a product of like, after all the journey I've been through of all the different spiritual teachers and therapists and stuff that I've worked with and gone through, it was like, what's efficient? And it was also my own personal experience of when I met my soul, of like taking that and trying to make it so accessible and so like doable.
Part of it too was because you
for
first were working in a therapist paradigm, because you're, marriage family therapist, and so you're working in this way of
with heavy addicts.
Yeah.
So I wanted something that's like, if you're off heroin for 3 days and you've lived a really intensely traumatic life, you can do this. That's what's amazing about it. So it's not like you have to go take like some Reiki training for whatever. It's like, no, any person, kids, anything, like they can talk to love. Everyone can talk to the your imagination, to summon love, to start to get actually practical grounded wisdom.
You just said it. Fake it till you believe it.
Fake it
till
you
you make it. Fake
I don't
it
even care if people believe it. Like,
Sure.
I'm literally like,
Just,
I don't care if you believe in God or soul. What do you just
like,
think love would say
it's like
if you're
learning
pretending?
how to sip wine. It's like learning how to taste the wine. When you start doing it, you're like, I don't know. And then you're like, oh, well, maybe. And then, so as you continue to talk to your soul or higher self or whatever you want to call it, or follow your intuition, or just ask questions even, just set that intention, I'm just gonna talk to my heart. Maybe that's the best way. Because whenever I visualize Lucy, she's in my heart. She is my heart. She's in my left side of my chest, right in the middle, and that's what I visualize. So I don't know, fixate on some kind of visual spot and just have a conversation. I'm drawing an L with my hands and my eyes closed. Because I'm going from my head down to my heart and over. Have that conversation if that's what helps me. I'm visual, so and then fake it till you understand it, or get a feeling, or learn how to decipher and learn how to be able to tell if something is Cabernet or Malbec.
Yeah. I'm wondering. See, you're so. What's the word? Just directed when you do something. You're saying I don't necessarily meditate or journal regularly, but when you do it, you do it. It's go big or go home, And when you came in yesterday and it was 20 minutes and you were already soul birthing, and I was yes, you go for it. You
and by soul birthing, Elisa, means bring the soul energy into the body and releasing, old stuff.
Well, hang on. As a quick little snapshot of what you guys do. I mean, I didn't really know how yesterday was gonna go, and Stacy has been talking to you for a long time about coming up here with me, and we've been talking about it, so we finally came, and I don't go into things with a lot of expectations. I'm fortunate that I don't have that perspective. And I also feel like my ideas are limitations as well. So it could be bigger than my imagination, so let's not limit it. So anyway, so I show up, and so we just kind of start talking, and then all of a sudden I give you I trigger, I say something triggering where I say the words I don't feel like I'm empathetic, and you're like, wait, no. And then you realize that there's some space in my my energy body that is like, and my soul and my programming and my,
it just didn't feel true to me.
Didn't
I'm like,
feel
you
real.
don't strike me
Right.
you strike me as so empathetic, so this interpretation has to be from somewhere else.
So
And
that's
what
the
is that?
egoic narrative.
Right. So then you identify that because, again, you're sommeliers and you know that that's not right and real. So you're like, yeah, you just said that you were drinking red wine, but that's white. So I know you're full of shit. Let's go in. And so you go, so then you're like, can I do some work? Can I do
That's
some
exactly what it
energetic
is.
work?
That's a great example, yeah.
Can I do some energetic work? And I'm like, all right, yeah. And so we start, staring at each other. And then I close my eyes for a second. You're like, if you can keep your eyes open, I'm like, done. So we just like lock in and you go. And so explain what you do then.
So
it's
what
like
we're
a combination of energy work, basically,
Yeah.
and soul incarnation. So we're feeling where your soul is, which is love, right? It's like feeling the vibration of
And you
where's
use
the
your
true
hands.
self. Yeah,
And
we
you
use
use
our
your
hands.
hands.
It gets freaky looking. And we just
Yeah.
tell people, don't mind us waving our arms over here. To technically move cords and move kind of blocked energies, traumas from the past that are stuck in the chakra and the body system, so that you can access feeling of the remembering of who you are. So the healing, like we were talking yesterday about what heals, I'm obsessed with that question, like what heals, and always how to do it efficiently as Capricorn. So it's like, I see where the thing is that needs to be healed, and then I'm like working on moving it out, and then as soon as you bring your soul, and it's like soul heals everything. So as soon as you're getting in a relationship to your soul around the topic that's triggered or activated, that in itself
It should
heals.
be said, you're not speaking either. Like, you're not talking. Adam, you're not talking. I'm not talking. We're literally just looking at each other.
Yeah. But
And there's
so
like
much
a
is
couple
happening.
words here and there of like, that's good, that's
Yeah.
good. Okay, there you go. And honestly, it's nice little affirmation because I might feel like something kind of drop, or like my shoulders might drop, or like I feel a ping, like, or I feel like a sensation, or I feel like I can, when you feel like you're about to cry and things start to come up and you're like, that's good.
That's my favorite feeling.
Right.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
so you knew, and I had like 5 waves of crying and
Yeah.
this.
And I'm like, here comes another contraction, because it is like birthing, where you have waves and contraction, because your soul gives it to you in doses you can receive. And I also have so much compassion for the ego in it, because Adam and I do this like every night. Like, we live like this. So if I'm like, I'm in a thing, I'm feeling great, Adam, he's like, okay, what's going on? Where's love? Where are you in relationship to that? You need to feel this thing. And I'll sometimes be like, oh, Jesus, like, do I have time to do this? Like, 3 o'clock on a Friday, I gotta go pick up my kid, like, but then it's like always more efficient to just go for it. So I know what it's like to feel scared and embarrassed, and almost like it's a lot for the ego, because you just start birthing this thing. So to just be able to be
your
like, you're
feelings
doing
become
good.
out of so the feeling, so your emotions that you have come through, honestly, they just feel out of your control.
Yeah.
And so that's scary, because like, you can't make me cry the way I cried all those times. Like, you can't look at me and say, there you go, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what do
We're
you
definitely
mean?
not like
You
making
can't
anybody
make
cry.
me cry
Yeah.
like that.
It's
'Cause,
more like the body is like, I'm so
Yeah.
excited to finally be
But
able
the
to
point
release
is, so people
this
can
thing.
get it. Like,
Yeah.
you can't make me cry like that.
No.
And so what's going on? Something beyond my imagination, beyond most everyone's
Yeah, you're not
imagination.
making it up.
And you're not making it, like, it's
Yeah.
just like, we can't even articulate what's going on. That's why it's hard for you
Yeah.
to really like articulate what you do,
Yeah.
because
If
it's
I was
like,
gonna
there's so much
simplify-
information in the
yeah.
knowing, but the words don't really give it enough description.
I think it's
Yeah.
really great how you're putting it, and it's also this idea that your biology is your biography. So everything we've lived through in this, and I believe other lifetimes, is
Oh,
stored within our
God,
body and the
yes.
energy field. So we think, I'm fine, life's going good, I'm great, right? And I'm not thinking about this traumatic thing that happened when I was 6 years old that I couldn't even, or 3 years old, which I couldn't even verbalize, like pre-verbal stuff that we hold in the body. And then we just walk around with like, me, like right now, more like hunched over. I'm sure there's something I need to cry out about, like why my posture is like this, right? But it's like all stored in there. And so then it's just kind of like, when you guys came in, we're like, we don't have an agenda for like what we're gonna do today. What we do is show up with, what is the body
Follow
and the
soul's
soul
agenda.
telling us
Yeah.
to do? How can we best serve this
Yeah.
person's life and their body, so that they can get aligned with love, so they're not just like, so we lessen the garbage bag. We all have a garbage bag full of our trauma, and we just try to take some out and make it less, so that relationships are more soul-to-soul intimacy instead of like projecting old wounds and stuff. So it's like, it's a lot we're really picky and kind of snobby about, I say snobby because you're the daemon, which is that part of you that's like the inner genius that has a drive that you're like, this is what I'm here to do on the planet. Like Adam's a musician, and when we listen to music and films, he's like picking it apart, and he's like noticing all these things about music, and I'm like, I don't know, the song makes me feel like this. Like I'm like way up here on the surface,
and he's like music.
Exactly. So when we do energy work, we get very picky,
particular
about the quality of the wine, you know, and like what's happening in the room, and like what's good and what's not good, and kind of like how to help.
Yeah.
You know?
I have an interesting question. Is are there some people that you've worked with, which would explain, which like if we're looking at the micro level of who you've worked with versus everyone there is out there, can you block your work? Can someone like not be
experience?
for
open to receive?
Sure.
Like it can be.
It's actually weird though, because sometimes people say, "I'm really ready for the work," and then they're energetically closed. And sometimes it's the biggest skeptics or cynics that are like so ready. So it doesn't really have to do with the ego narrative necessarily.
Just how deep we go. Because I think I definitely work with some men who just want to hear the theory behind things first to kind of get there, and that's the first step.
Right.
So I don't think
building safety. I mean, it's a lot for people. So we understand sometimes the ego needs like a little bit of like connecting dots to be able to do this work, because it's out there for a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't think we've met anybody that we can't work with. It's just what amount of time do they need to warm up to this idea, to integrate the information, to get to know their soul. Some people come in and they're just like ripe for the picking, you know? They're just ready to meet their soul. It's like right on the cusp, and I think there's some orchestration that they just found us right at the right time. And then some people will take like a year where we'll kind of first build up that thing. And that's why we love soul journaling, because you can really, like Elisa said, we don't care if people believe it. And you can, without believing in it at all, you can start building up that intuitive muscle. Just
with people that are more skeptical, I'll say, see it as a creative writing exercise. Yeah. You're just creating a character, and then you're just like talking to it. And then they'll over time build a relationship with that imaginary character. And they're like, Merlin, I'm thinking of one client, this is Merlin. Merlin's like a genius. And like, he's like, I don't know, Merlin's just like a figure in my head, but like Merlin is consistently amazing.
So you're saying he called his soul Merlin?
Yeah. So it's like, it doesn't matter if he's believing Merlin is his soul or not, but he's starting to like know and listen to Merlin. And
so it's really just the willingness.
Yeah.
And over time, even the most skeptical people will start to have sort of like a secret love affair with their soul, like I call it, because they'll be like, I don't know if I still believe this, but I actually feel so comforted when I soul journal.
Totally.
And I feel so safe.
I should say that too, is that the information, while I was describing how it felt when I was out of soul and in the egoic state or in the projection or triggered state, feels uncomfortable and scary and all those things. But when I'm in the soul state, it feels clear and simple and peaceful. Like there's a lot more peace there. Like there's simple answers. And most of the time, it has to do with my perspective. It has to do with, and then there's other times where there's information that comes through on someone else, like this is something they're dealing with, and you're like, and then you access compassion instead of being offended or angry or hurt, triggered. Like you're like compassionate, peaceful, and it seems simple, and you're like, oh. So that's what I'd say the difference is too when you're in the egoic state versus the soul state, is that one feels crazy, like neurotic, it feels frantic, it feels drama, it feels scary, and the other one feels so calm, so simple. There's not even always that much information. It's just really simple and clear, and you're like, oh.
What it comes down to, I think, is that question of like our statement of just be yourself, and it's like, but then how do you really be yourself?
Well, I would say that learning who you are is one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple.
I feel that's so true. It sounds like the easiest thing in the world, but it's like if you're really doing that deep and well, it's a very...
It takes a lot of time alone, and that's not something that we as humans have anymore, especially in the day and age of connection that we have through computers and social media and phones and everything. So I have found the most amount of evolution in who I am through solo time.
And I think our work and soul work requires courage is the word. Yeah. And you have so much courage, and that's why we love you, because like your willingness to just, okay, I'm going to go, I want to know the truth. To me, it's like courage to know the truth over the pain that might surface from that confrontation with that.
I just believe it's going to come out anyway. So I'm like, well, let's just go for it. Yeah, I'm the cap. That's the cap. That's like Capricorn is probably right. Like, well, we're going to get there anyway. So let's just go. Let's just make this as quick as possible.
And that's the decision to, are you making the choice to avoid that pain or to seek that truth? And that's kind of...
Because I originally, when I was like in my 20s, I was obsessed with any book that said intuition or soul on it. I read like so much stuff. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to help people. I'm going to like psychically train myself and others to get like this wild, crazy cosmic information. And at the end of the day, I was like, people know what their soul is telling them. It's not like reaching higher and higher for cosmic information. It's about courage to take that moment when you hear that voice to be like,
I'm going to listen.
Yeah. And confidence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's the courage to believe that and parlay that into confidence, which is like, I need to quit my job, or he's not the right one. Mm-hmm. Shit, I do know. Mm-hmm. You know, or and whatever it is, and that's scary. So it takes the courage to go, I'm going to be confident with the messages coming
Especially
through.
If you talk to a woman in a toxic relationship, because I used to work with domestic violence victims, right? Like,
oh my goodness.
They know. They know.
Yeah.
And they know what they need to do, and they know where the trauma usually came from of why they're in this, like from their past, right? Like they know, but then it's like programming, and the nature of trauma is to dissociate, so
and not
that's
having
hard.
the tools to connect to your soul,
and maybe not having the family modeling and all those things. So but soul can like help all of those things. I mean, I used to work with people in gangs, you know, like teen girls in juvenile hall, and it's like they would maybe be in a Sereno household where they grew up and everybody's been wearing that color since they were a baby, you know, and the feuds are old and they don't even know why they're in this thing. And so then you're like, I'm going to introduce your soul. And their soul's like, I don't want to be in this. But like my whole reality is this war that makes no sense to me. And then they'll start to like tiptoe out of that dynamic. Mm-hmm. And there will be like flying monkeys we were talking about yesterday from the family, like, no you don't you don't know love, you're screwed on your own, you know, like the fear threats. And then step by step,
flying monkeys is an interesting story. You should tell people real quick what it is.
Flying monkeys is this idea whenever you kind of break from like a narcissist or some kind of like intensely toxic unconscious like dynamic, that they'll send it's from what's the movie? Wizard of Oz, where she's like, and she sends the flying monkeys to go get.
So it's the people that will do the bidding for the person running the dynamic.
And they're usually unconscious. They're usually not like even like, I'm consciously trying to mess with your life. They're just like, I don't even know why this energy's coming through me right now to convince you to do the fear thing.
So we see that
they've been manipulated by a narcissist or a gaslighter or somebody like that. And they're like, I don't know. Wait, why are you thinking about that then? They're such a nice person. And you're like, what?
And energetically, just for the technical people out there, it has to do with first chakra, tribal cording from the back of the first chakra, which is unconscious, pastime programming. First chakra is about like, am I safe as a tribe? Like, where's my community? And like, a lot of times gangs will be popular in jail because it's like, I'm not safe on my own, but if I have like the Crips to have my back. So it's like this idea of family, but of course then it's like this toxic, warped family they don't really love or see or care about you as a soul. They're just like, it's like a collective feeding ground.
So when you start doing soul stuff, you really start fighting paradigms. You know, talking about that flying monkey dynamic, we'll see that sometimes if somebody gets the information to leave their relationship, like they're like, I need to have a divorce. This relationship is not healthy for me. Whoever that ex is, they might have 3 or 4 people that suddenly just get on their case. How could you do this? Why are you divorcing this person? Even though before they had no emotional bid or dog in the fight, is because they are also fighting for that paradigm. They're like, we've all kind of energetically agreed to this reality.
A fear-based paradigm.
And now you're the one that's stepping out of it.
And we don't want to have to face our unconscious stuff, and you're threatening us by doing that action. You're making me feel weird, because now I'm like starting to question things I don't even want to look at. So now we're going to kind of attack you. It's all unconscious. They're not like aware. And if you said this to them, they'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. And narcissists are a genius at kind of like creating these unconscious soldiers to go fight their battles for them, because they're really good at like manipulating people to feel like
not as important or not.
Like just they're a part of something. I don't know, battle going on.
Or they need that person. They need them, right? They put someone else down to make themselves look better. So they're like, oh, they're pretty awesome.
So we are such champions of soul that we see this happening all the time. We're like, listen to your heart, listen to your truth. And yes, it is. I got kind of intense writing the new book at this one part about this topic, because I always feel this and see this, and I want to fight for people's souls. And I'm always like, how can I word this the best so people like get it and do it? Because usually you're alone and everyone's against you, so you feel crazy when you're doing the love choice.
Sure.
And so to be able to really help those people in that moment and be like,
well, I think the egoic
what you're doing
narrative,
is it's being a warrior of consciousness, and you're breaking through. It's like the first geese flying in the front, right? That's the person who's like breaking the barrier. And so it is harder. It's like energetically for that person, but then you pave. This is the collective building. You pave like an energetic path for other people then ancestrally in the family, epigenetics wise, whatever, to be able to then, oh, well, my aunt did it, and so I can feel where she's breaking new ground with the family system. Maybe I can actually risk a little bit and love in my life and make some choices that I wasn't raised with.
And I think why this happens is because the egoic narrative is identified with being accepted by the culture or our friends in a way that's like, I want to be accepted for my current identity. So when you start doing identity work, when you start shifting your identity to soul, when you start doing self-growth, sometimes you'll see lots of those relationships dropping off with those people that are like, actually, I don't like you in your new identity. I don't like you learning about love and yourself and growing. You're making me look at my own wounds that I don't want to look at. And so this is a common experience for some people. But then I would say that there's such relief after you follow your soul and break from that identity, because you're finally free to be you, and then you finally find the people that can really value
your vibe attracts your tribe.
It usually is a cosmic test from a soul level. It's usually orchestrated like, okay, in your lifetime, you will have to face this big soul lesson. And it kind of is a pass or fail situation. Like, your soul always loves you and you can always try again. But the reality is there is a birthing moment, like where the baby's coming down the canal, and we're very invested in that. And that's why we talk a lot about soul is attached. It's not an Eckhart Tolle non-attachment. Like, it's all good, all is one, doesn't matter what you do with this test. It's like, no, the feminine, the divine feminine is like, no, this is the moment that you've worked your whole life. Your whole soul has been waiting for you to consciously choose love right now, and you can do it. And we're whispering for you, and like there's like there's a pressure to it.
I feel like this truth that if I have something difficult going on in my life, the next thing I think is, well, I better get it right because I don't want to have to come back and do it again. And I believe that I would have to go through all the same shit again. Maybe the same way, maybe close to it, but all the things that I've dealt with that I didn't want, that I worked through or didn't want, like, had to just put up with, like, I'm going to have to do that again to get to this very moment again to go, are you going to choose different this time?
I mean,
and the idea of having to come back and do my life all over again is like, not comforting. And so I feel like, because I personally believe in reincarnation. I believe in souls evolving, right? And so I think that, and I also think it is passed down. Like, I think there's a transmission then through lineage as well, where you can on a cellular level create a new programming, and that becomes a new reality. And then I think that you just vibrate at a different frequency then, based on how you are on that cellular level of being able to make different choices and have a new, just operate differently, think differently, believe differently, have a different reality, and vibrate at a different frequency.
That's great. That's beautiful.
And I think frequency is also why things drop off, in my opinion, is that, when you choose the positive thought over the negative thought, you choose the clarity over the drama, you choose the you choose, you're choosing to vibrate at a different level, and then you don't literally sync up with those people anymore. And so therein lies the discomfort in each other, is like, you don't really want to come down there, and they don't want to come up here. They don't know how to even. So they're like, we don't fit in anymore. Like, you make me uncomfortable. Like, so I think the frequencies is the division, right? Like, you just have to stay on your own path and, vibe as high as you can, and that's where your vibe attracts your tribe. Don't worry. As I've been comforted by Stacy along the way, like, at times having been told I was really weird, she's like, you're not weird. There are plenty of people out there that are just like you, and
they're all
you are
listening
actually
right now.
probably more on your own island now than you will be when you step into your truth.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, and when you accept that you're not weird, you will find that there's a huge landmass of people, I'm using her words, of waiting for you that are just like you, and you're not weird at all. So yeah, I think that's honestly a good moment to say, like, for those listening, and to encapsulate the whole.
There's other
like,
people.
If something is calling you and you think it's weird, I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not. And there's 7.5 billion people in the world now, or whatever there is, 1 trillion, and there are definitely people that are out there that are just like you, and your frequency will attune, and they will find you. You will find them, and life will start to continue to open and escalate and become more and more and more beautiful.
That's excellent. I think that's a great,
I love that.
great place to end.
I see that it is the ugly duckling story a lot, where it's like, when you're the swan with ducks, you just think you're the ugly one, and then one day you're like, oh, they're swans. They're over there. I get it now. Like, I was never wrong. I was never a bad duck.
Yep.
I was a swan.
Yep.
And you find your...
And that's just
your
your true nature. That's when you think your true nature is ugly. And when you get to know your true nature, it's really a beautiful
It's
thing.
always meant to be.
So keep it weird, everybody.
Yeah.
And keep it real, America. It was such a pleasure having you on the show. And
Thank you so much.
I know we've mentioned this mysterious character of Stacy Barnes, which we'll bring on to our next episode. Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on.
Join us next week when we talk to empath Stacy Barnes and Danica Patrick about their unique friendship and how Stacy learned about herself as an empath, how to support that, strengthen that in the world, and flourish.